Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Lindstrom, Chair of the Environment Committee, and I'll call the committee meeting to order for Tuesday, October 22nd. Few items on our agenda this evening. First one is the call to order, and second is the approval of today's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve today's agenda.
And
Second.
there is a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Carries. That takes us to the minutes of October 8th. Any changes to those minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval. Second.
Second. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. 6 items on our consent agenda. City of Lilydale, comp plan and comprehensive sewer plan. City of Coon Rapids, comp plan and sewer plan. City of Falcon Heights, comp plan, sewer plan. City of Corcoran, comp plan and sewer plan, and Arden Hills comp plan, sewer plan, and City of Hampton's 2040 comprehensive plan and comprehensive sewer plan. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. Okay, that takes us to our one and only non-consent agenda item, and that is the St. Croix Valley Odor Control Building Fire Restoration. It sounds like it was quite an exciting moment, exciting few days. When was that? Last January, I think it was. And that's nothing that you ever want to happen, and folks swung into action. An emergency order was put in place, and here we are today. Please take it away.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I'm here tonight to introduce Tim Amsteds, who is not new to the council, but is new to presenting information to the council. Tim has been with our organization for over 20 years, managing very large and complex wastewater projects, most often at the Metropolitan Wastewater Treatment Plant. And a couple years ago, we promoted him to assistant manager in Renee Heflin's group, the plant engineering group, where Tim has been overseeing projects that are being delivered, as well as mentoring some of our younger staff as they come up through the ranks. And so I wanted to introduce Tim to you, and also to kick off this project, which, as the chair mentioned, we had a fire at our St. Croix Valley wastewater treatment plant in January of 2018. Our staff, and through an emergency declaration, we were able to restore the facility and get it back and operating very quickly. But this project, as Tim will present to you, fully restores the facility and brings it back into good working order.
Okay, thank you, Janine, for those comments. Good afternoon, members of the Environment Committee and Mr. Chair. My name, as Janine had mentioned, is Tim Amstutz, and I'm one of the assistant managers in the plant engineering group. And I thank you for the opportunity to present this business item 2019-304. How do I advance this?
Could you please advance the slide?
Thank you. Good. This slide shows the St. Croix Valley Wastewater Treatment Plant and highlights the odor control building. And basically, the odor control building treats influent odors from the influent interceptor, and also treats the odors from the gravity thickener and sludge holding tanks that are at the bottom portion of that slide. A fire occurred January 7th, 2018 at the St. Croix Valley Wastewater Treatment Plant that damaged the odor control building. Immediate cleanup and remediation to restore operability were completed on January 20th, 2018 at the cost of $375,000. This work was performed under Emergency Declaration number 2018-21. Thank you. I wanted to illustrate some photographs before and after the cleanup. The right photograph shows the odor control fan for odor control vessel number 1 after the fire destroyed the unit. The fire actually started with this fan unit. The top left-hand photograph shows soot and fire debris right after the fire on one of the HVAC units on the second floor in the HVAC room. The soot and debris that you see on the photograph were removed as part of the initial cleanup and remediation. The bottom left-hand photograph shows after the initial cleanup, and it's actually looking towards the ceiling from the first floor looking up. And please note that the vertical walls and part of the ceiling have been cleaned as part of the emergency declaration. Part of the ceiling that is still covered in soot, that would be the darker portion, will be cleaned on the permanent project after the existing electrical conduits along the ceiling have been removed. As I had previously mentioned, the fire started in odor control fan number 1. In addition to fire and smoke and soot damage to the building, the fire traveled through the odorous air piping, causing damage to fans number 2 and number 3 and the activated carbon in all the vessels. Heat from the fire melted electrical and control wiring routed in conduits across the ceiling. Damage also occurred to critical building systems and equipment. The work that was performed under the emergency declaration included restoration of temporary building systems, including lighting, power, HVAC, and fire alarm. There was immediate cleaning of floors, walls, some of the ceiling, and equipment. In addition, there was construction of a temporary odorous air header to allow for operation of 2 of the 3 odor control systems. This second slide basically shows some more photographs illustrating a few things I wanted to point out, and I'll get that in a minute. After the system was brought back to operability and all the initial cleanup completed, we began work on the plans and specifications for the permanent repairs to bring the building back to the pre-fire condition. And this work will include odor control vessel repair, blower fan replacements, new odorous air intake piping, and activated carbon changeout. Further, the permanent building systems will be rehabilitated, including lighting, power, HVAC, and fire alarm. And the interior building surfaces will be further cleaned and coated. There will be some improvements to the current operation, including replacing the damaged odor control cabinet with new. That actually is the right-hand photograph there, the obsolete odor control cabinet. That was actually damaged by the water getting into the unit, so I have to replace that with new. We're going to be connecting 4 building HVAC units to a future controller for the building automation system. And we'll be installing soft starts to the blower motors and installing LED lights throughout the building. So the one photograph I wanted to point out, the one on the left, the odor control vessel, that's another photograph showing the main odor control room. You'll see in the front part of it the 3 odor control vessels. And you'll see the walls and some of the ceiling. As I mentioned previously, some of the ceiling is still has soot on it, and so we won't be able to get to that until the conduits and electrical wiring that has been damaged or removed. The other thing I wanted to point out in that photograph, if you look on the left-hand side, that looks like a semicircle. That is actually the temporary odor control header that we installed that will be removed and the permanent one installed there. Two proposals were received on September 12th, 2019, one from Total Mechanical Services in the amount of $2,761,131, and a second one from Pioneer Power in the amount of $2,936,669. The engineer's estimate was $2,805,034. Total Mechanical Services Incorporated was determined to have the lowest responsible bid. The Office of Equal Opportunity reviewed and passed the apparent low bidder's good faith efforts to meet the MCUB participation goal of 9%. The MCUB participation goal at the time of bid was 3.47%. The proposed action that we are asking the Environment Committee and Mr. Chair to consider is that the Metropolitan Council authorize its regional administrator to award and execute a construction contract for the St. Croix Valley Wastewater Treatment Plant Odor Control Building Fire Restoration. MCS project number 070227, contract number 19P023, with Total Mechanical Services Incorporated for their low responsible bid of $2,761,131. Oopsie.
We
Apologies
saw
for
it.
that.
Questions?
Members of the Environment Committee, Mr. Chair, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councilmember Vento.
My expertise with fire is limited to taking kids to the Wilmer Fire Department on field trips and to a dad who was a volunteer fireman. So I apologize if this is a strange question, but this occurred in January of 2018. The length of time between January 2018 and now, the rationale for that, I'm curious. Is it the bid process or?
Mr. Chair and members of the Environment Committee, as I had mentioned, there was emergency declaration, and then we had to do some extensive cleanup afterwards to, in order for us to develop the scope of work.
Okay,
And that took a long time.
okay.
And then of course, the scope of work developed the plans and specifications, and we had to go through the QC process to make sure that, okay, so that was the reason for the long
Okay.
period of time.
Thank you.
Other questions? I was going to ask, so during this process between January and when this is completed, has the odor control been compromised? Meaning if my home was a quarter of a mile away from this plant, would I have noticed, or do I notice a difference between now and before the fire?
Mr. Chair, members of the Environment Committee, not at all. As I mentioned previously, 2 of the 3 odor control units are back online and have been online since that time. And we do periodically check to make sure that the odors at the fence line is what it should be and almost perfect. And so we have maintained that ever since.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to move forward?
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for the St. Croix Valley Odor Control Building Fire Restoration. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
And that takes us to our primary information item of the evening. Mr. El Hassan, welcome. Talk to us about water supply planning.
Mr. Chair, Council, committee members, thank you very much for this opportunity to present about the water supply planning in the Metropolitan Council. My name again is Ali El Hassan. I'm the manager of water supply planning. Water supply planning is a unit within the environmental quality assurance group that report to Sam Paskey and then report to Lisa Thompson. The presentation today is mainly about why do we exist, what do we do, and how we do it, and then what impact we have in the region as a result of what we have been doing. And I know that this is a 20 minutes presentation, so I'm trying to go fast, but if there is any specific issues that you would like me to come back again or one of my staff to come back again, I will be very happy to come back again and do a specific presentation about any specific topic. I provided a handout, and in this handout you have 3 documents. The first document, the blue one, is a what we call it, a report to the legislature in 2017 that summarizes a lot of the information about the unit, about the work of the unit, and the direction. That's provided to the Minnesota legislature in 2017. The second document is the Minnesota legislation of 2005, updated in 2015 with regard to water supply planning in the metropolitan area. And the third document is a list of contact for the staff for the water supply planning unit. If you have any questions, please contact any one of us and we'll be happy to respond to your questions. So Minnesota is blessed with the available water supplies and water resources that's available for all of us. As the name indicates, 10,000 lakes, and we have more than that, definitely. And we are the headwater for the Mississippi River. We know that two of the biggest communities in the metro area, St. Paul and Minneapolis, and other 17 or 18 communities connected to that those regional systems. They use the Mississippi River for that water. But we are really blessed with a very rich aquifer system, underground water system, that provide water for 75% of the population who lives in Minnesota. Before coming to Minnesota, I used to live in California. I used to work in the Western United States. And before coming here, I made the assumption that since this is a 10,000 lakes, land of 10,000 lakes, mainly the main source of water will be surface water. And coming here and find out that 75% of the state relies on groundwater for their water use, it was a surprise for me at the beginning. But also that same percentage exists in the metro area. 75% of the people living in the metro area, they drink and use their water from the groundwater. That comes into two systems. Many of the people living in municipalities or living in cities, they get it through their municipal water system. But if you live in the rural parts of the metropolitan area, you get a lot of that water from the private wells that you own at your home. So by show of hands, how many of you own a private well? How many of you use water from a groundwater system? Municipality provide groundwater system. And how?
I do too, then, if you do.
So how many of you use surface water system?
St. Paul water.
St. Paul water.
I think that's surface
That's
water.
surface water,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Mostly surface water.
Mhm.
And so if you can see that 75% of the room use actually groundwater for their daily water use. And so if you think about the metro area, this is the land that have half of the state population. 3 million people live in this area, 7 counties. It's the same size of 2 states, Delaware and Rhode Island, if you combine them together. This is the 7-county metro area. So this is really a big area with a lot of variation of local issues that you can see into this area. We have more than 100 water suppliers in this area, keep providing water to their citizens and communities. And with that, it's very important for us to clarify what's our role and responsibility. We are not a regulator. We're not regulating water supplies in the area. We are not a supplier either. So Metropolitan Council responsibility is mainly in planning for water supply in the region. Why we exist? This is a question that many of the people will ask us, why the water supply planning unit exists in the metropolitan area. In 2005, responding to growing concerns about regional growth impacts on water supply, the legislature directed the Met Council to carry out planning activities addressing the water supply needs of the metropolitan area. And this is in the document, one of the documents I provided to you. And you can see how there was specific items that the legislature asked the Met Council to do with regard to understanding the situation of the water supplies and planning for the future sustainability of the water supplies in the region. That same legislation created what we call it the Metro Area Water Supply Advisory Committee. The purpose of that committee is to assist and guide council water supply planning. Councilmember Wolf is the chair of that for starting this year. And this committee has been in place since 2005. The members of this committee are representation from counties, from cities, from utilities, and from state agencies. So it's a very good group of people so that they look into the different issues and provide also a platform for communication between all those different entities that you will not see it in other places except in the metropolitan area. In 2015, the legislature went back and reviewed this legislation for the water supply planning and added what we call the Technical Advisory Committee, because they felt that MOSAC only, which is mainly looking into policy and policy issues, they really need technical depth from all the utilities, all the professionals in the area, in the region, so that they can provide help for the MOSAC or the Metro. I'm going to use the term MOSAC because that's easy for us. For MOSAC, so that they can provide in-depth analysis of the technical issues that's related to any policy direction that MOSAC is planning to take. And the same legislation give more authority or more power to MOSAC, that MOSAC now have the ability or the authority to approve the regional water supply plan that we call it the Master Water Supply Plan. That didn't exist in 2005. But also our role and responsibility relies on supporting Thrive 2040, the framework for development in the region, and also support the outcomes that's specified in Thrive MSP 2040, working with stewardship, prosperity, equity, livability, and sustainability. In addition to to support the goals, the water sustainability goal of the Water Resources Policy Plan. So immediately after the unit formation in 2005, staff started addressing some of the technical issues that impact the water supply sustainability, especially the long-term water supply sustainability. And as this slide shows, there is a lot of issues that we really need to understand at that time, and we started understanding. And I can say till now we don't understand all of these issues because it's a large area, and this is a very dynamic system that every day we have a new thing happening in different place in the metro area. But we tried our best, and the unit started to understand some of the issues that's related to the resources, the groundwater resources, the surface water resources, started identifying some of the emerging issues, and started developing some of the solutions with help of the communities. One of the biggest questions at that time is what will be the long impact of growth on our aquifers, on our systems, on our rivers and our aquifers. So people were asking what's the long-term impact on those resources. But also they wanted to understand the local condition of the aquifers. So the aquifer in Woodbury is going to be having different situation than the aquifer in Lakeville, than the aquifer in Brooklyn Park, as example. So those local issues really needed to be incorporated into looking into these and understanding of the issues. And the ultimate goal for Met Council to work into this area of technical support is to develop credible technical information that will help guide the local decision by those different suppliers. And so that was the main goal for us into working with the different communities in doing that. So I will talk about some of the findings from the analysis that we went through during those years, and we looked first at the historic water use trends in the metro area. As you can see in those graphs, the gray indicates the total water use in the region, the blue indicates the groundwater use, and the green indicates the surface water use in the region. And it's just a depiction of how we developed and evolved through the years, the region. And as we add more people, our water use is increasing, and we see that happening in the metro area. In 2015, the average day water use is 350 million gallons a day, and that's for the entire metro area. But as we are a planning agency looking into the future, and we are planning for, as example, 2040 at this point, this is our horizon for planning at this point. We have started looking as the region grows, and if we are adding more people, and this is what's projected, that the region is going to grow from 3 million people in 2015 to 3.8 million people living in the area, and also adding businesses. As we develop, what will be the impact on our water resources? And we definitely saw that if we continue using the water in the rates that we have been using in the past, we are going to see an increase in our water use as a result of adding more people into the region. And so we wanted to understand how our resources can meet those increase in our demand into the future. One of the tools that we started thinking about in how we can incorporate all the information in this slide: water quantity, water quality, water use, how we are using it, what time of year we are using more water than other time. Including all this information, we tried to develop a tool that can help us in creating different scenarios and help us to evaluate impact of growth on our aquifers. And that's resulted in developing a mathematical model. We call it Metro Model 3. It's kind of our workhorse in the region, in this organization for our evaluation of the impact of those growth in those different regions. And we run different scenarios in the model with the future, with those futures that have different range of activities and growth in the region. As example, the map, the big map in the right of this slide shows that if we continue using water as the same rates that we have and adding another 800,000 people in the region, what will be the impact on this? This is one specific aquifer. And the darker blue means that water are going to be deeper than it used to be in 2015. But we are starting thinking about other different scenarios, and we said, okay, if we grow but we reduce our water use from the rates that we are using now by 20%, which happened in many of the communities around the metro area. City of St. Paul, City of Minneapolis, and other cities around the metro area have reduced their water by 20% over the last 10-15 years. And if we do that, we start seeing less dark blue in the region. But if we increase our water use by another 20%, that's what will be the lower left map that you see there, that we have more dark blue in the region, indicating that we're going to have more impact on the aquifer as a result of increasing our water use. And these are kind of the range that we can plan for, ranging from less 20% to more 20%, and come up with some ideas of how we can, if it goes less than 20%, then we're safer, we're going to be in a sustainable future. If it goes in the other way, what will be the plans for how we are dealing with that? Taking all of the technical understanding of local and regional issues, and also understanding all of the complexities that I talked about, and having some of the tools that we developed over the years, with the help of the communities, we developed the Master Water Supply Plan in 2015. In 2010, and updated the Master Water Supply Plan in 2015. So the vision and the goal for that plan is to have sustainable supplies for current and future generation in the region, so that we wanted the water resources or the water supplies to be available for communities, so that they continue grow and continue develop in the region. And the main purpose of the Master Water Supply Plan is to empower suppliers by increasing collaboration improving their planning and implementation of the plans, and also providing some sustainable approaches that fit their needs and their local conditions so that they can implement it. And also they're protecting the source water for for all of the communities in the metro area and the water quality, and also advance the water conservation, water efficiency in the region so that we can continue growing with sustainable growth in mind when we're developing this. So how we're doing our work, and this is part of the work, the after we developed the master water supply plan, we looked at one of the biggest outcomes is collaboration, increased collaboration among communities, among suppliers. And we understood that one size doesn't fit all. As I mentioned, issues in the East Metro might be totally different than issues in the West Metro. And there might be some similarities, but again, we wanted to have more of a local ownership of the issues and actions also to resolve some of these issues. For that reason, we created 8 sub-regional groups. These sub-regional groups are voluntary groups. Our role in those groups is to convene, facilitate these meetings, and provide the technical and the financial support for the projects that come out of those groups. When I started here in 2012, we had only one sub-regional group that was active at that time. Today we have 8 with 65 members from the communities in the metro area who are members in these groups, and they regularly meet every 3 months, some groups every 4 months for other groups. And it was not easy at the beginning for some of these groups to get together for many reasons. For some of the communities, it was very difficult or a challenge to sit together with other 8 communities and come up with a shared vision and shared goal with regard to water supply, especially knowing that there is some similarities, some differences. It's also, there is some political dynamics between some of the communities that might be not easy, especially at the level of the elected officials, that the staff are dealing with it on a continuous basis, and it was really not easy for them to navigate some of those issues. Also, there is relationships between the staff at the city levels who are trying to build some of these relationships. Some of them, they have built relationships in other issues, dealing with police issues, as example, or fire departments issues, but they didn't work together in some of the water supply issues. But at the end of the day, all of the communities, they found that there is significant benefits, and that's why they keep coming to those meetings. Those meetings are well attended, and they keep continuing attending those meetings and requesting some of these meetings. Actually, more recently, we have more of those communities coming up with ideas of projects that really they want help with, because they are important for them to address, so that they can provide water supplies to their communities in a sustainable fashion. And the benefits that they found, that these sub-regional groups became like a platform for sharing information about utilities issues. Many times they will sit down in those meetings and will talk about, oh, we have 5 wells running out, have problems. How do you guys fix it? Who do you use for fixing those? And some of them also talk about the ideas that they can share of how they can share resources so that they can reduce costs. So there is a financial benefit for many of the communities about on how to share resources. And also they found that there is a better management for issues, especially that spread beyond the community border. And that's why they wanted to talk that the aquifer doesn't stop at the city limit. It goes beyond that, and they need to talk about that. One of the biggest issues they were talking about is wellhead protection. Many of the communities, they have their wellhead protection area out of their jurisdiction. So other community have the decision-making on those communities. And so they needed to work together so that they can address some of these issues for a better management of the resources. And the other thing that they found is getting together is giving them a bigger voice for advocating for themselves in front of the agencies, in front of Met Council, and in front of everyone else that they wanted to make their voice bigger so that they can hear them. So, and our role in those, as I mentioned, in those sub-regional groups became very clear from the beginning is how we can advance the collaborative effort. And it's set by the communities. The communities demanded for us what need to be done in some of these, of how what's our role in these sub-regional groups. And one of the first thing, and we did this survey 2 years ago for 39 of those communities who are members of these sub-regional groups. Actually, 39 responded to our survey, and they asked for technical support. Many of the communities they don't have specific professionals in the specific areas. As example, they don't have a geologist in their staff. So we have a geologist in the Met Council, and that's when they started asking for help from some of our staff. They wanted us to facilitate the meetings, help the convening, setting the agenda, and getting the group together. They wanted also Met Council to help in developing messages about water stewardship at the regional level and how that could help all of these communities. And just I want to bring your attention to the lower left picture. This is a park in Woodbury, and the sign there is designed by Met Council, and they took that, printed out, and put it. It's about how you efficiently irrigate your lawn. And this is for a park that a lot of people use for running, for walking around the lake. And so this is part of the examples of how our work is used by some of these communities. And one of the biggest things they asked the Met Council to help with is to find financial resources to address issues that reach beyond city borders. One of the issues that they found that city councils, they don't want to approve funding for projects that reach beyond the city council border, and so they wanted help with that, and that fits with the role that Met Council as a regional planning agency plays in the region. How are we doing? Are we doing good? Are we doing bad? Are we going into the right direction? How are we helping the communities? And how is that reflected into the planning and the actions by the communities? I'm going to use 2 examples of many that we have been collecting over the years just to see how our work is really reflected in the planning, the local planning at these community levels. This is City of Bloomington Comprehensive Plan. As all of you know that 186 communities are developing their comprehensive plans, and you heard today from 7 of them or 6 of them developing their comp plans and their other plans. And part of those plans, they will talk about water supply and how they are planning to provide water into the future. And this is City of Bloomington saying that they wanted to support regional modeling because they found that the groundwater model is very helpful for them, that we develop in making better decisions. I can give a good example for how our groundwater model at a local level is used. When any city in the metro area wants to develop their local wellhead protection plan, which is a requirement by the Department of Health, they start from our groundwater model. And that will save them significant amount of money that they don't want to spend developing their own model so that they can use it. They start from our groundwater model, saving them a lot of money for in consulting services, and that's how we see that there is a big benefit for having this tool for the communities in the metro area. And it's very encouraging for us to see that it's actually reflected in the local comprehensive plan, saying that we wanted to continue developing our groundwater model because it's a very useful tool for them. The second example I would like to share with you about it's about Woodbury Comprehensive Plan. City of Woodbury actually reflected very well on the theme of water efficiency and water conservation. And as I mentioned 3 or 4 slides before, one of the outcomes or desired outcomes of the master water supply plan is improved water efficiency and water conservation in the region. And the regional plan helped shape local commitments about water conservation and water efficiency. City of Woodbury would like to grow by adding 20,000 people by 2040 with no increase in water use through improvement of water efficiency. And they have been doing a lot of great things, and some of the implementations plans that they have been doing is they buy some of those efficient irrigation controllers, and they buy them in bulk and they sell them to the homeowners on a reduced price. So if you would like to go and buy it on your own, it's $200. If you apply for City of Woodbury, you get it for $20. So the city have created funding mechanisms so that they can pay for this by increasing their rates. And so this is a significant development in the city that have been happening for the last 3 years. Every year they sell about 1,000 irrigation controllers. They call it smart controllers. And the city have been targeting outdoor irrigation as their biggest efficiency tool that they wanted to reduce so that they can maintain growing, but at the same time maintaining the same amount of water use that they have been using in 2015. And Met Council have been, our work here in the Met Council and the water supply planning have been leveraging cities like Woodbury and others who wants to work with the water efficiency. In 2015, we created a grant program to encourage communities to reduce water use and use water efficiently. The program targets 3 main areas: replacing of toilets, replacing of washing machines, and replacing of old controllers with what we call it smart controllers. And the smart controllers are ones that connect to the nearest, connect into the internet and connect to the nearest weather station and determine on its own that today is not a day for raining, for irrigation. As example, like today, it will not start like today. And this is make a big difference for us. The program started in 2015. We received funding from the Clean Water Fund as a source for funding to distribute to communities. We got $500,000 for 2 years in 2015, 2016. We provided the funding for 19 communities. Since that was a new program, communities didn't know about it. Only 19 communities applied for it. 2020, 2021, we got funding for this program. It's $750,000. Now we have 40 communities applying for it, and the requested amount is $1.4 million. So it's exceeded the amount that we have right now. We are going through the process of determining how much each one of the communities will have. We are trying to have all the communities receiving some funding rather than deciding 5 communities or 6 communities will receive all the amount, because we still want to continue encouraging the communities to develop the resources that they needed for running this program into the future on their own. And this is the main purpose of having such grant program. And we'll come back again to the Environment Committee when we have the determination of all the communities and how much they're going to get for your approval for that grant distribution. Another program which is we set in a collaborative way with the University of Minnesota. This one is targeting non-residential water use. We have a lot of industries here that use a lot of water, and many of them, they have their own permit from the Department of Natural Resources, that they don't get water from cities. They have their own wells and they pump that water, and usually they're big users. Since the permit limit is you have to pump about 1 million gallons a year or 10,000 gallons a day, you need to get a permit from the Department of Natural Resources. So all of those are big users in the region and big industries, and they are using a lot of water. We created this program with Minnesota Technical Advisory Assistance Program, Minnesota Technical Assistance Program, MINTAP. And the program actually is sending interns from the College of Engineering in the UFM to those industries, and we pay for the intern going there, and we pay about $12,000 for each of those interns. The intern will spend about 5 months or 4 months with the industry during the summertime, working with them in auditing the water use in the facility. And at the end of the day, they provide them with recommendation of, we found this problem, this is how you can solve it, and this is how much water you can save. I will give you one example of what happened in 2018. 2018, we sent 5 interns. We started with one intern in 2011 when we started this program. 2018, we sent 5 interns to different 5 businesses in the metro area. The water saving from this program were 60 million gallons a year. This is water that's enough for 2,000 people in the metro area on average for a year. The financial savings, this is the operational cost reduction for the businesses, were $350,000. The students made recommendations. The businesses implemented 90% of those recommendations, which was really a significant impact for us, because usually many people will think, oh, those are just the students, they don't have any experiences, why do I need to listen to them? But all of those businesses, they listened to the students, and they made all of the recommendations within a year. This is when we went back in 2019 and we evaluated that program, and we looked on the percentage of implementation of these recommendations, and we found that 90% of what was recommended in 2018 was implemented by 2019. And it's really a good thing that we are giving really a real-world training for the engineers and scientists of the future. This is what we're building, and hopefully we are hoping to have some of these young engineers and scientists coming and working with us in the Metropolitan Council here in the future. And this is an opportunity that we wanted them to have the ability to learn from doing a real work in the future. Where are we heading in the right direction? We want to take this slide showing that in the last 5-10 years, our water use have been going down. Even with the growth and development picking up in the years after the recession, after 2010, we started seeing our water use is going down. We are growing, we're continue growing, we're adding more people, but our water use is going down. And hopefully we'll continue to see these trends into the future. There are so many factors. I'm not going to say that it's only my staff work that have changed this. I would love to take the credit for all of that, but it's mainly we have very wet weather in the last 5 years, and that made a significant difference in the amount of water used in the summer in the metropolitan area. But there is so many other things that happen that we see that there is change. There are a lot of efficient tools or efficient appliances that people are using in their houses in the last 10 years. It's more than what we see in the previous 10 years. And so there is a good awareness that's happening in the region that we want to build on for future planning and future advancement of our sustainability. So what we use for all of this work that we do, again, as I mentioned, the metropolitan area is a big area, is Delaware and Rhode Island together, and we have only 5 staff members. And the staff members are really capable. We have 3 PhDs in the unit. We have 3 PEs, professional engineers, and we have 1 professional geologist. And we have, out of those, 3 are engineers by training and 2 are scientists by training. And luckily we have, in the last 2 years, we added 2 interns that we have been working with us directly in the Met Council here, and they have been providing a lot of good information and good work for us. And I think you have met them when they did the presentations of the interns in the chambers about 2 months ago. And but also we tap into the resources the vast resources that's available for us in the environmental services. We work with wastewater in seeking input from engineers who are doing projects. We work with water resources to work with scientists who are doing surface water hydrology. So we are trying to maximize our resources that we provide, make it available for the communities by reaching out to our internal partners. But also we are lucky that we have funding from the Clean Water Fund that's become available for us every 2 years to do our work and do our projects, that we were able to hire consultants so that we can cover all this area and all these issues. And so we have 6 consulting companies working with us. Also, we have collaborative agreements with the University of Minnesota, with the MINTAP program, as well as the Extension Services program. And we hired non-profit organizations like Freshwater Society to do some of the educational effort for us, reaching out to citizens in the region. And we also have agreements with the United States Geological Survey, USGS, tapping into that federal resources, and many times they bring their own federal resources to the region so that it can help us. Our main source of funding, as I mentioned, is Clean Water Fund. Clean Water Fund is specific for projects that support water sustainability and the efficient grants. We cannot use Clean Water Fund for planning activities. That's one of the responsibilities, and that's funded by the Met Council. Met Council is responsible for all the funding for the regional planning, the coordination and support of the 2 advisory committees, as well as the local water supply planning support. As I mentioned, collaboration is a very big and important factor in the way that we are doing our work and how successful we are at this point. We continue to build trust with the communities, and we continue to have the local and regional lenses taken into consideration when we are doing our planning activities. I think with that, I hope that I didn't exceeded my time. Did I? I'm sorry.
You're right on target. It's fascinating.
Thank you very much.
Questions? Councilmember Bento.
As it relates to the Thrive lens, specifically on the equity issue, do we have any stress points coming down the pike as it relates to equity and access to affordable, clean water in our region? Either one of you might be able to answer. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, committee members, the equity lens, it's very challenging for us because we are the planning agency rather than the supplier,
right?
Which is most of that happening at that supplier level, and we know that the supplier level is doing a lot of good work with regard to equity. Some example of that is water rates. Many of the communities, and this is a study we did about 2 years ago, we wanted to know how the water rates exist in the metro area, how each one of the community charge for their water. And for many of the communities, they have what they call a basic level. That's the amount of water that's needed by human beings for existing. And in many cases, that's very affordable. In comparison to many other places around the country, we have most of the affordable rates in Minnesota. And many of the communities, they are doing that clearly in their design of their rate structure. So probably I would say in many cases what we saw, the average is about 8,000 gallons per month, or 8,000 gallons per person per year, I think, or something like that. And that's many of the communities will set that as the first level of the rate, and that will be at a very affordable price than the next level of the rate. Anything exceeds 8,000 or between 8,000 and 20,000, they will charge it at a higher rate. But knowing that 8,000 is what you need to exist and do your work. One of the other things that we started thinking about, and this is just at this point is a consideration into the future, how we can help communities with the grant program that we have. on how we can target some of the low income communities to take advantage of this program. This program, we created a program in a way that it is a cost share program between the city, the Met Council, and the homeowner. And what we found in many places where it's low income communities, that even the cost share some of the community members are not able to provide that cost share. And so we are thinking about how we can do this, and we're learning from other communities who are doing this right now. We are talking to San Antonio, Texas, because they have a program in place for the last 20 years, and we are trying to get some information about that.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just had kind of a couple of questions to start with, but in the 1940s, it looked like most of our water came from surface water, and then we started getting groundwater that went higher. So can you maybe talk about the pros and cons and the history of why did the groundwater become much more than the surface water, even though we have quite a bit of surface water, looks like very plentiful in our region.
Mr. Chair, committee members, the 1940, and I can go back to the slide just to, it's this one actually. So in the 40s and 50s, growth was happening in St. Paul and Minneapolis, the two main cities along the river. And it was very easy to extend the infrastructure needed to build that water system just from the river and start taking it. As we move beyond the first ring from the two main cities and then into the first ring, with many of the communities still in the first ring, they use water from Minneapolis, St. Paul. But you go further and extend beyond those, then extension of infrastructure from the river becomes very expensive. And we know that at that time that there was a plenty of groundwater that it's very good quality and available, high quantity in some of the places around the metro area, and it's locally available. And so many of the communities starting tapping into the aquifer, so because it's easy to build the infrastructure very close to the well, rather than extending pipelines and infrastructure and treatment from the river. And that's why you see this more of the population now living in areas away from the two main cities, that they are using groundwater for their daily use.
Okay, good. This one more follow-up.
Of course.
Okay, all right, thank you, Chair. The other one would be is when we tap the groundwater, how long does it take for the water to come back in and replenish the groundwater tables and the aquifers?
Mr. Chair, committee members, this is a very good question. Actually, we have a model that will tell us groundwater recharge, how it's happening in the metro area. And depending on the aquifer that you are taking water from, we have 7 layers of aquifers, and I wish I had that slide that showed the different layers of the water, where we are taking water from. The main aquifer that provide water for many of the communities, I would say 65% of the communities in the metro area, is called the Prairie du Chien aquifer. And the Prairie du Chien aquifer, the recharge time for that aquifer is between 50 years and 100 years. The deepest aquifer is in the metro area, and this is existing for many of the communities also. And if you can look into this, these are the different aquifers that we see in the metro area. The Mount Simon Hinckley, it takes 10,000 years to recharge that aquifer. And it's very interesting that most of the recharge areas for the Mount Simon Hinckley exist outside of the metro area. They are in Wright County, in neighboring counties to the west of the metro area, most of them. And so you have an aquifer. If you are looking at the first aquifer, which is the superficial aquifer, this is the very first layer that many of the communities take water from. That about 10 to 15 years, you have recharge into those areas. So depending on where you are in the metro area, which aquifer you are taking water from, the recharge time is going to be different.
Okay, thank you.
So you emphasize collaboration as one of the key benefits of having MOSAC and the Technical Advisory Committee and just water planning in general. What happens if one community disagrees with the direction of another community? How are those differences resolved?
Mr. Chair, committee members, it's most of this is resolved at the community levels. And there was a couple of examples that happened for us. We were working with some communities in the past, and because there is an issue outside the water, they were planning to collaborate at the water level, but because there was some issues regarding the fire department, they used to share the fire department, and then something happened about that. Then they decided we're not going to collaborate in water. So we have seen some of these issues. But later on, some of the same communities, they came back and they sat down again and they started the collaboration on water resources and water supply. So it's mostly done at the community level. We continue to be a convener, facilitator when the communities are asking us to do, because to tell the truth, we didn't get here easily. It was a very rough road for us to be this collaborative, to gain more of the trust of the communities. And for sometimes, and still till now, communities will think that Met Council want to take over the water supply system. It's a notion that's out there. We are not trying to do that. Met Council has never been thinking about that, because many of the communities are doing a great job in supplying water to their residents. But at the same time, it's mostly done at that community level where they figure out how to resolve some of these issues. And in some of the meetings of some of the sub-regional groups, we can see some of these differences clearly in the meeting. And someone will say something, the other community will say, no, we don't want it to do it that way. After 2 or 3 meetings and discussion, and we provided the technical support for all of those, they realized that we can reach an agreement of how we can proceed into the future with this specific issue.
And would you say the same thing with I was thinking about the contaminant plumes. Is most of the activity around solving those challenging issues are at the supplier level, or do we have much of a role in solving those issues? Because it's an issue obviously in the East Metro, it's an issue in St. Anthony, New Brighton area, and probably several other areas at Rice Creek Commons.
Mr. Chair, committee members, that's specifically to the supplier. That's the supplier responsibility on how to resolve these issues. And if you look into the issues that we have in the East and the West, in the East Metro issues are, it's an effort led by 2 agencies, the Pollution Control Agency as well as the Department of Natural Resources, working with the suppliers on coming up with a solution for those for communities. At the end of the day, the community is responsible of providing affordable, clean drinking water to their residents, and that's where all of the responsibility falls, and that's how they are dealing with it. In the New Brighton area, it's again the responsibility of the community, and they are really blessed that they have someone who will pay for all of this. The Army is paying for all the repairment of they have to upgrade their system recently because they found a new substance that they didn't find in the past, and they have to upgrade their treatment facilities so that they can keep up with the cleaning of that. And many of the communities, they don't have this leverage that you have someone who will pay for you if you discover something in your water source. But the communities in the East and communities in New Brighton, they have that ability. Many other communities are dealing with water contamination on their own, and they're trying their best to continue providing the clean water.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add a couple of things. If you look at this map of the drawdowns of the aquifers, there's this nice green spot, kind of where Savage and Burnsville are. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but in 2005 or a little after, Savage and Burnsville partnered. There's a gravel mine that was pumping lots and lots of groundwater straight into the Minnesota River, just because they had to dewater for their mining operation. And Savage and Burnsville got some money from the state to use that water, clean it up, because it's once they've pumped it up, it becomes surface water, so then it needs more treatment, like the Minneapolis and St. Paul water. So the state helped them out on paying for a treatment facility for that water, and so they aren't using as much other well water because they have this water from the mine. So that's why the aquifer there has recharged. So sometimes a small thing can make a big difference in our aquifers. Talking about the equity stuff and things happening to people's water, Elko New Market recently found that they had radium in their water supply. They're a very small community, and they had to pay for a water treatment facility way before you normally would in the lifespan of a city. You know, like Lakeville, I think, put in a water treatment facility when there was maybe 35,000 people. Elko New Market has less than 5,000 people, I think. But they still had to pay for a facility to get the radium out. So they actually bill their water monthly rather than quarterly like most communities to keep the sticker shock from being quite so bad. So there is, you know, depending on if you don't have somebody to fix your problem, the price can get somewhat high for places.
Well, thank you. Councilmember Vento.
What was, Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Wolf, what was the source of the radium?
I don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I can add, it's naturally occurring in the
Okay.
soil. That's not a human activity. It's naturally happening in that part of the areas. We have some areas in the region where they have arsenic. That's naturally occurring in the aquifer, and some of them have radium that's naturally occurring.
Thank you.
Great. Councilmember.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just sort of like seeing this revelation or what have you, is where we have this great system that treats wastewater treatment, and we put it back in the river, cleaner than what the river is. It just seems like, is there a possibility of doing a piping where we go to our, our cities and that do the water suppliers kind of work together on it then, where they start with a cleaner product than what the river would be, or in certain cases? Has that ever been discussed, or and what kind of costs and challenges that be for something like that?
Mr. Chair, committee members, that was one of the topics in the Water Resources Policy Plan that was developed in 2015, looking into reuse of wastewater. And I think we have plenty of staff from the wastewater that this is a topic that have been discussed and have been researched. And I would leave that to Janine to talk about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. As Ali mentioned, the wastewater reuse was identified in the Water Resources Policy Plan, but the implementation process was not identified in the policy plan. So last year, we went through a process of convening a customer work group that included public works directors, city engineers, we had some finance directors, a couple city managers, who looked at the issues of when the council would come forward and participate with the community on a water reuse project. And the council went through a very, very long process of taking input from the communities and agreed when, in fact, we would be at the table as a partner in providing reclaimed water. Now, while we do meet all of our permit limits and the water is cleaner than what is in the river, We do have a very high level of total dissolved solids as well as chloride in our water at some of our locations. And so in fact, while the water is cleaner, it still has to be treated. There needs to be additional disinfection, and then there also needs to be additional filtration. So it might not be as cost effective as one might think it would be, because remember, we're competing with groundwater that requires very little treatment. And even the water being provided by the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul is probably even more costly than the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, who are doing treatment of surface water sources as well as lime softening. So again, we have done the cost analysis many times, and there are still challenges to wastewater reuse. All of that said, we have had some industrial users and some communities that have approached the council about the potential of using reclaimed water for a large industrial user. And we have worked with a number of communities, particularly in the areas that Ali mentioned, where the water, where you see a little bit more of the drawdown and where the aquifer may not be as high producing as in other areas of the region.
If I may add one thing to Mr. Chair, to what Ginny mentioned. One of our facilities actually infiltrate groundwater, reclaimed wastewater in the ground in East Bethel. And that's an idea of using the reclaimed wastewater for recharging the aquifer in those areas.
So the water goes from the wastewater plant into the groundwater.
In some
Infiltration
infiltration basins, yes. And if I could add one more thing, Ali spurred me to another thing. We also have a project in our capital program portfolio. I think Lisa Thompson may have mentioned to you that one of our goals in our program is to do a reclaimed water project at the Metro plant. So exercise leadership and demonstrate reuse of reclaimed water in our processing as processed water at our wastewater treatment plant. So if we can work through that process at our wastewater treatment plant, we'll probably be more successful in other areas of the region. But again, I do want to stress that we want to be there where communities invite us to be there to fill a gap.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would add, in parts of the country where water is very scarce, those reuse projects are sometimes easier to do because their water is already very expensive. So you're not necessarily paying a lot more to reuse the water. Our water, because it's relatively plentiful, is also cheaper than it is in other parts of the country. So it's taking a little while to make it cost effective to reuse the water. There are some places that make beer out of used water, but there's also, people have a U factor. Even though it gets all cleaned up, there's that U factor of where that water came from, that people are a little hesitant to drink the water.
Great. Other questions? Yep, please.
All right, thank you. So speaking of maybe the cost savings, but when I kind of been working like with our plumbing code and things like that, we seem like we don't talk about gray water or waterless toilets and things like that. And is that things that are on the horizon, or those in discussion topics? But a lot of times the barriers that I hear is it's like safety or sanitariness, or makes it where they don't have that discussion and that then.
Mr. Chair, committee members, the state has started looking into the reuse topic in the past 3 years, and this is the state agencies who are responsible for all of these regulations about the reuse, and they are at the point where they're looking into those different reuse sources of reuse: wastewater, gray water, and stormwater. Gray water, it's just going to be a difficult thing to do at this point because of the plumbing code, and even stormwater to use it indoors is going to be a challenging thing because of the plumbing code at this point. So there is a lot of discussion happening at the different practitioners level, as well as the state agency level, the regulators, so that they can find a middle ground where things could work, and where to determine where are the low-hanging fruit that they can go after. With regard to the toilets, our program, we specifically, the grant program that we developed, we specifically ask communities to replace old toilets that sometimes some places use about 6 gallons per flush if you have a very old house, with what we call it water sense toilets, which is using only 1.3 gallons per flush. And many of the communities also looked into, there is another type of toilets, or the middle ground, which is, this is the ones that before 1984 or 1985, those are the ones who are using 3 gallons per flush. So we are not using that. We're not providing funding for that. We are providing funding for the water sense ones that's use only 1.3 gallons per flush.
And you mentioned that, so there's 40 communities that have applied for that funding for 2020, 2021.
That's correct.
And that'll be coming back before the council at some time in the near future. And so I'm making a presentation to a city council tonight, and I don't know if they're one of the 40 or not, but that the next round of that, assuming we get funding from the Clean Water Fund, would be spring, summer 2021?
2021 we'll
Okay.
know if we are going to get funding for this program. The last time this program, we started in 2015. We got $500,000 for 2 years. Come 2017, in the last minute, the legislature zeroed down this program. We didn't get any funding for it. Luckily, we were able to go back and establish this program for $750,000. We were asking for $1 million. They reduced us to $750,000. I hope it's million. $750,000 for 2 years. And as now we have the evidence that communities are requesting more. Their need is more than what we have this time. They asked for 1.4 million, and definitely there will be more need in the future. So hopefully in 2021 we'll go back to the Clean Water Council and we ask for more money. And it's actually with the support of the communities. A lot of the communities wrote letters to the legislature as well as the Clean Water Council to support this program. And it's just it's a popular program. Communities are seeing the benefit of it. We provide 75% of the grant of the program, of the loan of the program to the communities, and the communities provide 25%. And this amount that's provided as a rebate should not pay for the entire replacement of the appliance or the toilet or the controller. So the homeowner will still have to pay some money for doing that.
But a pretty healthy subsidy to really lower that cost to make it more feasible.
That's
Spur them to action.
Yeah, and many of the communities actually, when our funding went out, they have dedicated that 25% of their cost, and they continued having the rebate program that they created for 2 years with less money, but now they are going back again to get the funding from us so that they could impact more people who are asking for those rebates.
Councilmember Vento.
Just want to say thank you to everybody in the Environmental Services Division. In the last 7 months, I just can't even begin to measure how much I've learned from all of you. And I know that tomorrow there's an employee recognition event, but I am so grateful. As a novice to so much of this, somebody said to me recently, boy, it must be really cool to be on the council and have that much power. And my response was, it's not the power that's so great, it's the knowledge and what I get to learn. So thank you. This is phenomenal information.
I would second that, absolutely. Yeah, wonderful information. Any other questions? Outstanding job. Keep up the great work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that takes us to Lisa's report.
I just want to give a quick thank you for attending the special event at Rogers about a week and a half ago. We don't get to do that very often, as you know, because our system in terms of numbers of facilities has been pretty stable for a long time. So it was really a big deal. And head count was over 40 people. Was exceeded our expectations in a very good way. And just want you to know, not only that's not all the excitement with Rogers, because as you heard that day, we're going to be planning a new facility, which we don't get to do very often either. We're usually rehabilitating or expanding our existing. So it's going to be fun to do modern technology and innovation on a new facility at Rogers in the not too distant future. The other piece is we're heading into November. This is your first year, except for Wendy. You're going to learn that November and December are just going to be gone before you know it, because with the holidays in there, there's going to be fewer meetings, and we're going to be trying to cram everything we can in to get to the end of the year. But we're also looking for 2020. We'll be bringing our Environment Committee work plan to you, and now's a good time. If you've got any items or information you'd like us to add into that 2020 work plan, now that you've got a year, almost a year, be heading into a year, and you've gotten to know us a little bit, what are some things you'd like to make sure we include in our programming for 2020? So you can give that some thought. Grab me or send me an email, and we'll see if we can get everything figured out before 2020 arrives.
And our strategic planning process will kind of wrap into that work plan
That's right.
as well, I'm sure. And I know that going back to that Rogers visit, that the plant operator seemed to be really thrilled to get the key, that he's been opening up that plant for 30 plus years. And the fact that we gave him back his key was a real class act, I think. It was really
Well,
neat.
thank Janine for that idea, which
Smart
was a
move.
brilliant one. And it really did land well. So thank you.
I would definitely entertain a motion that Councilmember Wolf bring every single cookies to every single meeting. That'd be one. Second out there. Yeah. Okay. All right, all in favor, bam.
Thank you,
Yes.
Chair. Just one quick question. So the comprehensive plan that went through community development and us tonight related to Arden Hills, I just want to confirm that, and it was on consent, right? Does that go to the November 13th meeting? I'm reading that right? Okay. Because I just know there's been some conversation around the lack of affordable housing in the comprehensive plan. They were at the Equity Advisory Committee meeting last week, and so I'm just kind of curious to know if we're going to get a briefing from staff or.
Yeah, it was also a topic at community development last night, and yeah, I'm sure it's on people's radars. No question about that.
Yep. Just to follow up, do we know if that's going to be on the consent agenda then, or I guess.
I don't know for sure. That would be up
We
to.
haven't had any of the comp plan approvals on the consent agenda. They're all regular agenda items.
Please.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Fredson, at the meeting last night, there was extensive discussion, and there was a statement by Russ Adams. So it was thoroughly discussed last night as well.
Okay. Thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.